is Mark, and today I'm going to be taking you all on my journey from a 590 GMAT with an IR of 1 to a 720 with an IR of 8. Starting off with a little bit about myself, I just finished undergrad. I graduated with a finance degree, and I know that for me, grad school is quite a few years away, but I wanted to take the test now and get it over with. One, while I had the time, I had a whole lot of free time on my hands before I started full-time work. But two, more importantly, while I still remembered how to study. I was a little scared that if I waited a few years to start my prep, that I wouldn't have the proper skills that I did in undergrad to really sit down and grind out through all the material. So for both of those reasons, right now was the perfect time for me to accomplish this goal. The first thing that I did before I started any form of studying was I watched a YouTube video that was very similar to this one, where it basically detailed somebody's experience starting from pretty much ground zero and working their way towards an amazing GMAT score. And essentially I wrote down everything that he said, and I pretty much wanted to replicate everything in order to accomplish a similar goal. So the first thing that I did after watching that video was I took a mock test, a baseline score before any form of prep, just so I could see just how much I could truly grow throughout the process. And that was when I got that 590 GMAT and that IR of 1. Now in that video that I watched, the number one resource that the person recommended was Target Test Prep. And because I wanted to replicate everything that he was doing, I blindly trusted this guy, and it worked out very well for me. I did the free trial for TTP and instantly fell in love with the program and knew that this would be the number one resource, pretty much the only resource that I would need to go from that 590 to my target of 720. Two things that I think TTP does really well at separating itself from other resources available for GMAT prep are one, its content, but two, its structure. So in terms of content, TTP does amazing at both breadth and depth. So when I first started my studying, I was honestly a little bit overwhelmed by seeing all of the different topics that the GMAT would test me on. And it was a lot, from absolute value to prime factor to exponents to even geometry, which I hadn't even heard of for the last 7 or 8 years probably. And while it was overwhelming at first, TTP structure makes it honestly too easy to fall behind or to get lost in all of the topics. Their calendar view, seeing what I had to do today, step by step, what I needed to do tomorrow, it really let me map out my goals and what I needed to accomplish in a given week. And then also its depth. Having a lot of topics is one thing, but if you only know a little bit about each topic, you're not going to perform very well in the GMAT. TTP does a great job at taking all of those topics and going really thoroughly through all of them. At one point I was asking myself, how many ways can the GMAT ask a question about a prime factor? And surprisingly, there is a whole lot of ways that it could be asked. So I was really thankful that TTP was able to be so in-depth in every single topic that it delivered on. After falling in love with TTP's free trial, I immediately purchased the 4-month plan, I believe. And I wanted to really stay committed to the calendar of what they had me doing, going through all the chapters and then taking all of the chapter tests. And admittedly, during the first month and a half, 2 months of TTP, I was slacking off a little bit. I was only studying probably between 5 to 10 hours a week, which is frankly not enough, especially given the amount of free time I had. But it was the last few weeks I had of undergrad, so I wish I did a little bit more to make the rest of my life, the rest of the time of studying easier, but it's all good. So when summer rolled around, I had about 2 months left of the program, and I knew I really had to buckle down in order to finish studying and then also take the test and perform well before I started working full time. So by the time summer came rolling around, I was glued in my chair and I really had to study from anywhere between 6 and upwards of 12 hours a day. And I'm happy that I invested all that time because it paid off in the end, obviously. I finished the program. I began doing some mock tests from the official GMAT. I purchased the official mock tests, and I was mocking pretty well, and I felt comfortable and in a position to take the real GMAT. I opted to take the GMAT online because I thought being in the comfort of my own home would maybe relieve some test anxiety and allow me to perform optimally, especially because I was taking the online exam at the same desk, same time frame, that I was when I was doing the mock tests. And when the day came around to take the first official test, I admittedly think that I was extremely nervous during it. And while I scored a 39 verbal, I completely blew the quant. I believe I got a 40 quant, giving me an overall 650 score, which is significantly lower than what I was mocking at, and also significantly lower than the goal of what I wanted my GMAT score to be. So I was extremely disheartened. I was kind of at a rough spot. I only had a few weeks before I started working full time, and it kind of felt like I just came crashing down back to ground zero. But that truly is not the case, because I had put in all of the work, put in all of the solid prep. So even though I was at that moment a little discouraged, I was not back to where I started. I was still exactly right there and ready to take the test again. I reached out to Scott, founder of TTP, expressing that I was a little dismayed at the results, and he was extremely helpful. We pretty much just chalked it down to test anxiety. And what I did next is not what I would recommend to most people, especially so after taking a first exam, and if it doesn't go that well, almost everybody recommends that you take at least a week, upwards of 2-3 weeks, to kind of fill in the knowledge gaps and see what you could do better to not repeat the same result the next time. I didn't really have that sort of time available. Full-time work was starting really soon, and I needed to get the result that I needed in a short span of time. So I really chalked down that first 650 to test anxiety and test nerves. And I know that the rule for an online test is after you take one, you have to wait at least 16 days for the next one. And I did not have 16 days left to wait and to spare. So I found a little workaround. Even though I took a GMAT online test on a Thursday, I found out that I could take an in-person exam the next day if I wanted to. So I immediately, this was test anxiety. I was mocking 49 quant, so getting a 40 on the official quant was just not acceptable and not where I actually was in terms of my knowledge. So I took that first GMAT online on a Thursday, and then 3 days later on that Monday, I took another GMAT in person. This one was a few hours earlier than the other test. So the other test, I think it was at 11:30, and this one was an 8 a.m. test. So I had to get up at 6 a.m. to get my brain working, get the blood pumping. And it wasn't ideal, but it was the only time that the test center had to offer. And I knew I just had to jump on it and get the score that I wanted. So I was at a good place before I started full-time work. In the meantime, in those 3 days, I really buckled down on quant. I knew I had the knowledge in my head, but getting a 40 quant really dismayed me, and I was watching a lot of YouTube videos to, honestly, not even to get more knowledge, but to build my quant confidence back up in a way. So Monday rolls around, take the test at 8 a.m., and everything was going really smoothly. Honestly, I had a better experience doing it in person than at home. While I mentioned earlier taking the GMAT online at home might make you more comfortable and relieve some testing anxiety, taking it in person, I think, obviously takes away that comfort, but also gets you more focused. Like, you're in a standardized testing room. This is what you're doing. You're not focused on anything else. What somebody's cooking in the kitchen, for example, when you're taking the test online. So for that reason, it's different preferences, but I truly think that taking the test taking the test in person really helps you kind of get in that zone right away, and not to spend the first few questions kind of mentally waking up a little bit. Now, going in person, even at 8 a.m., like, you're good to go. And I was significantly more focused because of it. So after I finished the exam, I received a quant of 47 and a verbal of 42 with a IR of 8. Now, the quant 47, I was slightly disappointed of, significantly better than the quant 40 that I received 3 days ago. But as I mentioned previously, I was mocking quant 49, even quant 50 on one of them. So I still wish I did a little bit better, but at that point, it was the final test I was going to take. Beggars can't be choosers. I was extremely happy. And then with that verbal 42, honestly, it was the highest verbal I'd ever gotten, and I was really happy because of it. And then also the IR of 8 was also the highest IR I had ever gotten. Previously, I was getting 7s on every single mock, So getting that 8 was really nice, and also I believe could help me in a way bump up that Quant 47. Having that IR perfect score could kind of supplement that a little bit. My final takeaways and parting words are: one, do TTP, uh, get involved with it, start to finish. Trust me, by the end of it, you will be an extremely strong GMAT test taker. And then lastly, just trust the process. Uh, it's a long journey, it's a long road, especially as I mentioned, TTP's course is extremely fledged out, which you need to use to your benefit. So trust the process, even though at some points throughout you may feel like your progress is plateauing a little bit. Trust me, it is not. Just keep sticking through it, and eventually you will also see the result that you want. So, with that being said, that was my journey from a 590 to a 720. And I wanted to say thank you to TTP and to the rest of you guys as well. All right.